So I just read an article on Wiki Parfum. Do you guys follow that website? It's a database, sort of like the databases we know that had existed for years. This is fairly new, and I believe it's funded by Puig. There's a backing by Puig, I believe. But I just read an article from their website about Pantone. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pantone, but Pantone has named Mocha Mousse 17-1230 as the color of 2025. 2024 was Peach Fuzz. This year it's Mocha Mousse. And so Mocha Mousse is going to be used in branding and design and for marketing materials, and it can be used, for the fashion and design world. And I thought, why not put together a collection of Mocha Mousse fragrances for you guys to discover this year if you haven't already. So I've got a great collection of fragrances. They're gourmand-leaning fragrances, of course. Mocha Mousse. Mostly the idea of mocha comes from coffee and chocolate, or coffee and cacao. And of course, there's other gourmand notes in there as well. If you're curious to discover these fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian talking to you about Mocha Mousse fragrances. Let me know if you're familiar with Pantone. I've known about Pantone for years and years and years. In fact, I think they have their own stores. So they come up with the colors, and of course this year it's Mocha Mousse 17-1230 as the color. And you know what? I've been seeing a lot of brown tones coming out recently. And I'm not the biggest fan of brown as a color, but once in a while I like them. I mostly prefer brown in clothing for shoes and those kind of things, like belts and shoes and leather goods and things like that. But not a lot of clothing items. It's not a favorite color. But of course, I love the color in fragrances, obviously. There's a ton of fragrances I'm going to talk to you about today. Sit back and watch this video on Mocha Mousse fragrances. We're going to start at number 1 with the House of Kerosene. It's followed. Guys, this is such a nuclear fragrance. I haven't even opened up the cap. Moving it around and I can smell this thing. This is really, really intense. And remember, if you go back to a couple of years ago, I mentioned how when I first was testing this fragrance out, I used to spray it in the studio and the fumes would land on my clothes and my pants would smell like this fragrance. And days, weeks later, even after dry cleanings, my clothing would still smell like it. So it's a nuclear fragrance, one of the strongest fragrances I've ever put my nose on. In fact, recently I had clients here, they wanted to smell it. I said we have to go outside and smell it. We went outside and smelled it. A couple of hours later, we went back and it was still in the air. So it's that nuclear. But if you like the idea of Mocha Mousse, this is coffee, cocoa, caramel, maple syrup, vanilla, and amber. You basically get, like a breakfast smell in a bottle. It's so super potent. Be warned with that one. Check it out and see how it wears on you. Moving on to the House of CALAJ. This is DELIZIA OSCURA. So this fragrance was featured in a mystery box last summer. Let me know if you got your hands on it and if you have smelled it. It is basically a good combination of dark chocolate and coffee together with an overdose of violets, but there's also other gourmand notes like hazelnuts, vanilla, milk, caramel, raspberry, musk, lily of the valley, bergamot, ylang ylang. So this is the ideal Mocha Mousse fragrance. You've got it here. You also have milk. And of course, if you ever have had a mocha, you've got the idea of coffee, chocolate or cocoa, and of course, milk in there, sweet things and all that good stuff. So the idea of Mocha Mousse is totally prominent here with DELIZIA OSCURA. Just keep in mind, there's lots of violet in here as well. So some of you might not be fans of violets. Some of you might be, but this is DELIZIA OSCURA from the House of CALAJ. Just a quick segue here. I wanted to let you guys know that our store is closing for Scent Club kits, and we have some kit number 13 available. So if you haven't bought yours, they're still out there. Get your boxes and kits right now, because the store is going to be closed for about a month and a half, and there will not be any sales in there. And there's still a few kits left of number 13. And it features Tonka Hysteria, Cherry Punk Extrait, and Jasmine White Flowers. Those are the fragrances in the kit. But moving on to a new house I haven't spoken about. This is Voyager's Criollo. This one right here. What do you guys think of this? So once again, we've got a combo of dark chocolate and coffee together, creating that kind of a mocha effect, but not necessarily very milky here. But you also have other gourmand notes. You've got honey, plums, raspberry, jasmine, patchouli, and tonka. For me, it's more like a decadent chocolate with a coffee edge and a fruity edge together. Super delicious, really wonderful gourmand, and a new brand that I recently discovered, and definitely going to highlight them soon. But to me, this is fantastic if you like a mocha style fragrance. This is Criollo from the house of Voyager. I think you could see the name up there. So next, going to the house of KYSE Perfumes. This is Oui Plus or Oui Plus if you're doing it in French. So this is inspired by the what you see on the cover there. And even though the bottles are kind of cheap looking and the artwork and all that kind of is like homemade looking, the actual fragrance inside, the juice inside, is so delicious. It's graham cracker, marshmallows, cocoa, burnt coffee, Peru balsam, patchouli, styrax for one yum, deliciously gourmand fragrance. Realistic smells here, that's what I like about it. And if you haven't discovered KYSE Perfumes, definitely try them. Go catch my video on some of their fragrances. I think there's like 6 in the video. This is definitely one of my favorites from this house. So it's Oui Plus from the house of KYSE Perfumes. Let me know if you're familiar with that. Next, going to a house called LIIS. It's CHOUX, this one right here. So CHOUX actually has a mocha note in this, but it's also quite gourmandesque. It has cream, citrus, fleur de sel, caramel, vanilla beans, cocoa, sandalwood, and mocha. It's one yummy gourmand created by Jerome Epinay, who does all the fragrances for this house. And it seems like Jerome Epinay gets out there and claims over a brand and they starts making all the fragrances. I'm not saying he's doing it with all brands, but of course there's Byredo, Wilhelm, now there's Lee. But this is definitely one of the best from this house. Super yummy gourmand and definitely has that kind of mocha-esque quality to it, especially if you like that sort of thing. So this is LIIS CHOUX. Let me know if you're familiar with that. Then going to the house of BOHOBOCO, not the one that's in our Scent Club kit currently. This is another fragrance called Coffee White Flowers, this one right here. So this is definitely a mocha effect, and we're getting the creaminess from the white flower notes or white floral notes in this, but it's an overdose of coffee, chocolate, jasmine, rum, cinnamon, cloves, cacao, vanilla, leather. It settles to a leather, gets warm and amberine to dry down, but of course milky, creamy with the overdose of coffee and chocolate. Quite yum here for this fragrance. Gourmand, and I don't think this brand has a lot of gourmands, a few in the collection, and this one to me gives me that mocha effect that I have been talking about. So this is BOHOBOCO Coffee White Flowers. Let me know if you're familiar with that. So up next at number 7, going to the house of Dien Nam, it's Vietnamese coffee. So Vietnamese coffee to me is a delicious coffee fragrance that actually not necessarily 100% the experience is like actually having Vietnamese coffee, but as a smell, it's so authentic and realistic. I don't care if I don't experience the Vietnamese coffee experience. I do get a really delicious, chocolatey, slightly creamy coffee experience here. So it's roasted coffee, dark chocolate, condensed milk, muguet, tonka beans, amber, and cedarwood. The milk is not necessarily super intense, and I think this is why it's not giving me that authentic Vietnamese coffee experience, but still, it's creamy in there. It's chocolatey for sure. There's definitely coffee, so you do get that mocha vibe, and it's a super delicious coffee fragrance. If you haven't discovered it yet, please do. This is one of the best coffee fragrances on the market now. It's Vietnamese coffee from the house of Dien Nam. Then going to the house of ELECTIMUSS London, we're talking about Caspian Cherry once again. Caspian Cherry definitely has coffee and also dark chocolate in addition to white chocolate. So it's super creamy and smooth. But of course, you've got the almondy touches, the amaretto liquor, and the cherries in here to create for a more than a mocha experience. The mocha experience with the addition of almonds, boozy notes, and of course cherries. I think they did a great job with this gourmand. They created a really awesome experience and definitely something that doesn't smell like lost cherry, even though it features cherries. So ELECTIMUSS London's Caspian Cherry for a really super delicious Mocha Mousse experience with a lot more things happening in there. So the next fragrance, going to the house of MAISON TAHITE, it's Coffee Bomb. Do you know this one? So Coffee Bomb from the house of MAISON TAHITE is created by Arturetto Landi. I think that's the perfumer, and definitely created a really delicious experience. It's got loads of coffee. Then there's also cocoa or cacao with rose, so giving you a little bit of that intense cafe vibe minus the milkiness. Just doesn't get uber milky for me, but you've got the rose combined with the coffee, and of course there's chocolate in here as well. In addition to those notes, there's patchouli, frankincense, saffron, tree moss, jasmine, iris, heliotrope, and many other notes. It does get gourmand, and it does eventually become smooth and creamy, but not as creamy as something like Intense Cafe, where it's super like smooth and creamy. Just you can experience the dryness with this one. But once you get past the dryness, it's a super delicious gourmand with coffee, cocoa, chocolate touches, and of course rose. So that's Coffee Bomb from the house of MAISON TAHITE. And up next, going to the house of by Kilian, it's Black Phantom. So Black Phantom to me is a boozy take on a Mocha Mousse type of experience. You've got coffee here, chocolate with sugarcane, rum, sandalwood, and patchouli. And even though I haven't been speaking about this fragrance, it definitely used to be one of my favorite fragrances from this house. In fact, it's so super yummy. But you definitely really notice the coffee. It's almost like very caffeinated. You can experience it against the chocolate, and that gives you that kind of mocha mousse vibe. And I used to drink a lot of mochas in the past. In fact, it's one of my favorite things to have during the colder months, especially around the holidays, because it gives me a bit of a festive vibe. And that whole mocha mousse as a color from Pantone is very interesting that it's happening this year. And definitely Kilian's Black Phantom, you get that experience with the coffee and the chocolate and other notes that are combined in here, especially the booze. So that's Black Phantom from the house of by Kilian. Then going to the house of Gleam, it's Espresso Please. And once again, we've got espresso or coffee in this fragrance with an overdose of dark chocolate, but there's also nutty notes, tonka beans, and musk. It eventually gets ambery for sure, but up top, it's an amazing smell. I've always mentioned that there's a bit of a boring stage in this fragrance. So the initial blast is so delicious. Beautiful blast of coffee and dark chocolate with that hazelnuttiness. It's the mids that kind of gives me a bit of a boring experience, but then a dry down becomes ambery and musky with a little hint of the chocolate and the coffee and of course the hazelnuts. Try this one. It's Gleam's Espresso Please. Definitely one worth trying for a mocha mousse experience. Then go into the house of One Day It's Soul. So this is a very unusual experience for a mocha mousse. There's a lot of woods in here. It's almost like there's woods and an aquatic touch. I don't know where I'm getting a watery effect in this, but for some strange reason, it starts off with water and woods. It's almost like water hitting woods in a carpentry place where they're shaving woods, because you get the wood smell quite a bit. And then of course the watery effect, but eventually it starts becoming chocolatey and coffee as well. And this is when you're getting the kind of gourmandesque touches with the notes together. But it plays a little strange, but almost like unusual, but oh, okay, there are the gourmand notes. Finally, they're appearing. But it's coffee, nutmeg, bergamot, cedar, cocoa, vetiver, vanilla, and sandalwood. Again, if you want something very surprising and unusual for a mocha mousse experience, try One Day's Soul. And try it and get back to me and let me know how you experience that fragrance. And then this next fragrance is from the house of Bon Parfumeur. It's Iris Cartagena. So I did a video with the owner of the brand. If you haven't caught that video, please go catch it. In that video, I didn't really get excited about this, but this has definitely become my favorite in the collection of extracts that they had just launched. I believe there's 7 of them or 6 of them. I have to double check. But this is great. It was recently featured in a mystery box. It's got rum, cocoa, iris, coffee, sandalwood, vanilla, vetiver, and papyrus. It's super delicious. Very powdery, very woody, but you've got the cocoa, you've got the coffee and vanilla coming in to give you that kind of a sweet, gourmandesque mocha mousse experience. Let me know if you've tried it yet. Iris Cartagena 502 from the house of Bon Parfumeur. And then last but not least, I'm going to tell you about 2 fragrances you can layer together to get that mocha mousse experience. We've got Awake by Acro with Dark. Awake is all about coffee. Dark is all about chocolate. The 2 together, so delicious. It's a combo that I've done quite a bit. I love it. And the thing with these fragrances from Acro, at least some of the earlier ones, they're really great to layer with. especially if you want to add a coffee touch to one of your fragrances. You can add the awake to it or layer the awake to it. If you want to add a chocolate touch to your fragrances, you can add the dark to it. Their fragrances are made in a way that they're very easy to layer, and that's why I like layering these two together. It gives me that kind of a mocha mousse chocolate coffee combo that's super delicious, and it really, really works. It's almost like the fragrances are made for layering. So this is the last two fragrances I'm going to talk to you about. I've got a few other fragrance suggestions that don't really feature both notes together, the coffee and the chocolate, but you can use one of the acros or something similar to layer with. For example, Amore Cafe, definitely very coffee, vanillic, milky. If you layer it with the dark, you get the chocolatey touch on top of that. It makes it really, really yummy. And then we've got Juice Boxes 54. So there's chocolate in this, but there's no coffee. So I would layer that with the Awake. And the Awake already has cardamom. So 54 has cardamom as well. So it'll just enhance the cardamom and make it a kind of a coffee take on 54, which kind of makes it delicious and takes it into more of a gourmand territory. Even though it's quite gourmandesque and chocolatey, vanillic, and milky, you amplify it with that coffee touch with the Awake, and it makes for a different kind of fragrance. So that's quite delicious. Something like from the house of Maison Margiela, Coffee Break. It already has the coffee in there. You can actually intensify it with the Awake and then add dark to it. So add more coffee and chocolate to Coffee Break, and you're getting a more of a mocha experience. Super delicious and very easy to layer, especially also the fact that Coffee Break is not super complex. You can totally do that with that. And then Atelier des Ors Cocoa Chimia. It already has a counterpart of the coffee. There's a coffee version, which is the other fragrance. Kawe Carda, I believe it's what it's called. I prefer the Cocoa Chimia. You can try that cocoa with the Awake, and once again you get a mousse effect, a mocha mousse effect. But you can also layer, I think, with their own sister fragrance that launched together with this to create that kind of a mocha effect. But for me, Cocoa Chimia is so delicious on its own. But then you've got Lait de Chocolat, this one right here, Lait et Chocolat, I should say. It's from the house of Chabot. This one is a chocolatey, creamy effect, but if you layer it with Awake, you're getting that kind of mocha effect with this as well. And same thing with Profumum Roma Soriso. Once again, if you layer it with Awake, you're getting that mocha mousse effect. I've got chocolatey fragrances here more than coffee, because the Awake is so good to layer with, you know, chocolatey kind of fragrances. And finally, Gallagher Fragrances Wicked Good. Same thing with Awake. Layer the two together, it gives you that kind of a mocha mousse effect. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on Pantone's Mocha Mousse color of the year. Are you a fan of this color? Let me know at a comment below. And do you have a favorite fragrance that matches this style, a combo of chocolate or cacao with coffee and additional gourmand notes? Let me know what you're thinking of, which fragrances you thought or came to your mind with this kind of an effect. Add a comment below, and let me know your thoughts on these fragrances that I discussed here today as well. And last but not least, don't forget to take advantage of your latest Scent Club kit number 13. Just keep in mind, on Saturday the store is closed for a month and a half, so there will not be any sales available there until almost the end of March. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.